The first sensation Captain Elias Ward registered was the cold and invasive chill that clung to him like frost on metal. His eyes opened to a blinding beam suspended above, a harsh ring of light that dissected the darkness around him. As vision adjusted, he realized he was seated, wrists anchored to a flat metallic surface in front of him. The restraints were seamless, fused with the table as if grown from it. He inhaled slowly. Sterile air. Chemical. Artificial. Not human. A faint hum pulsed through the room, matched by a quieter rhythm beneath it, like an alien heartbeat woven inside the walls. When Elias lifted his gaze, the shadows shifted. Figures emerged, 3 tall silhouettes with slender limbs and silver skin reflecting the ceiling lights in sharp strokes. The Krizari. He had only seen sketches in classified dossiers, elongated skulls, deep sockets where faint bioluminescent eyes glimmered, bodies sculpted from a blend of organic structure and metal. They moved without sound, their joints sliding like articulated blades. One of them stepped forward. Taller than the others, posture rigid, presence cold. Subject designated Human 07, it announced, voice layered with metallic undertones. I am High Interrogator Vila. You will respond when addressed. Elias blinked at him once. I actually prefer Elias, he said calmly, as if introducing himself at a casual meeting. A brief flicker passed across Vila's features, confusion, irritation, or curiosity. Hard to tell. You are restrained for your safety, Vila continued. Your mind must be assessed before evaluation proceeds. Most people start with a simple hello, Elias replied. The smaller alien to Vila's right turned sharply toward him, tendrils rising from its spine in agitation. Elias noted the reaction with quiet interest. Emotional tells. Good. Vila ignored the interruption. Human cognitive structures require thorough analysis. Your species is unpredictable, a destabilizing variable in interstellar classification. We will determine whether your kind is suitable for controlled integration. Elias let out a slow breath. Integration is your word for occupation, right? Silence. Mechanical eyes stared without blinking. Your resistance will determine the method, Vila said. Elias leaned back as much as the restraints allowed. You abduct a Terran officer and expect me to cooperate? We expect understanding, Vila corrected. Submission follows naturally. Not with humans, Elias said. We don't fold that easily. Another pause. Vila seemed to analyze the sentence, dissecting tone, cadence, meaning. Elias sensed the discomfort. The Krizari prided themselves on predicting the emotional responses of conquered species. Humanity's unpredictability unsettled them. A faint hum intensified. The table glowed beneath Elias's arms. Thin lines of light crawled across the surface like veins awakening inside the metal. From the ceiling, slender tendrils descended, stopping inches above his temples. Elias met Vila's gaze. If you're about to poke around in my head, at least buy me dinner first. The smallest alien, a frailer one with narrow shoulders, tilted its skull. Why does he vocalize irrelevant data? He attempts psychological disruption, Vila responded. It is inconsequential. Elias smiled faintly. You keep telling yourself that. The tendrils lowered. A cold sting grazed his skin as the biotech interfaces locked onto neural frequency. His vision blurred for an instant, colors smearing across his field of view. A ripple of pressure pressed behind his eyes. Then the Krizari pushed. They probed his thoughts with methodical precision, expecting smooth access, obedient memory recall, compliance. Instead, they met a wall, a deliberate mental barrier constructed through years of Terran cognitive defense training. Elias felt their surprise ripple through the air. Vila stepped closer. Increase amplitude. Lower his resistance. The tendrils pulsed. Light flooded Elias's vision. Memories flickered, shadows, fragments, faces, but nothing coherent enough for the Krizari to grasp. His breathing steadied as he anchored himself to a single mental point, a steady center crafted for moments like this. The Krizari hesitated. This response is atypical, Tavel, the assistant, whispered. Human minds do not present such density. Elias chuckled under his breath. Maybe you're out of practice. Vila's posture stiffened. You misunderstand, Human 07. This is a preliminary scan. Your defiance only prolongs the inevitable. Defiance? Elias said. I'm barely trying. The lights above dimmed slightly as the neural interface surged. A soft vibration traveled through the table and into Elias's arms. He gritted his teeth, not from pain, but from the strain of maintaining the mental barrier under rising force. The Krizari sensed emotional energy, but they couldn't decipher it. Human emotions didn't run in linear patterns, they spiked, dipped, twisted. And Elias knew exactly how to use that. He let a flicker of anger spark, then masked it with amusement. The aliens recoiled for a moment, unsettled by the contradictory surge. Unstable pattern, the assistant murmured. Contradictory signals. It does not conform. It conforms enough, Vila snapped. Increase penetration level. Maybe you should ask nicely, Elias muttered. You'd be surprised how far manners get you. Vila's eyes glowed harder. Your humor is irrelevant. Then why are you reacting to it? Elias countered. For a moment, the interrogation chamber fell into a ringing silence. Only the low hum of the biotech systems filled the space. Elias sensed he had struck a nerve, which was exactly what he needed. Frustration bred mistakes. The pressure behind his temples intensified again as the tendrils attempted to force their way deeper. Elias steadied his breath, focusing on the lessons drilled into him back on Earth. Visualize an anchor point. Control the threshold. Redirect emotional surges into noise. Let them drown in the chaos they themselves created. The assistant's voice trembled slightly. Hi interrogator, this is not functioning as projected. It will, Vila said, though his tone lacked certainty. Elias looked up at him calmly. You know what your problem is. Vila stared coldly. Enlighten me. You think pressure exposes weakness. But humans don't crack the way you expect. We push back. The tendrils sputtered. A flicker of static crackled along their edges. Vila stepped back. End initial assessment. The tendrils retracted instantly, leaving Elias's skin tingling with residual charge. The lights stabilized. Tavel approached Vila. His neural structure is incompatible with our predictive models. It responds with disruptive variants. Vila studied Elias with an expression that resembled contemplation or suspicion. We will adjust methods. Elias shrugged. Take your time. Vila leaned closer, eyes narrowing. Your mind will open, human. We will see what you hide. Elias met his gaze without blinking. Be careful what you wish for. Vila turned sharply and signaled the others toward the chamber exit. The door slid open, revealing a corridor washed in pale blue light. Before leaving, Vila gave a single command. Prepare the advanced sequence. The door sealed behind them. Elias exhaled slowly, settling back against the chair. His wrists still burned from the restraints, but his resolve was stronger than ever. He wasn't here to break. He was here to win. And the Krizari had just made their first mistake. The lights in Elias Ward's cell brightened without warning. The shift wasn't harsh, more like a cold hand brushing his cheek. He lifted his head as the door slid open and Vila re-entered, flanked by the two assistants. Their movements were sharper than before, their metallic silhouettes reflecting tension they didn't bother hiding. This time, additional equipment floated behind them, spherical drones with thin filaments trailing from their cores, glowing faintly like embers in a dying fire. Advanced interrogation tools. Vila approached the table with measured steps. Your earlier resistance was inefficient, he said. We will begin a deeper psychological engagement. Elias cracked his neck. If that's your way of saying round two, you could have said so plainly. Tavel, the smaller assistant, responded sharply. Plainness is unnecessary. Efficiency is the priority. Funny, Elias replied, because nothing about this feels efficient. The drones circled him, their hum rising in pitch as they synchronized. The restraints glowed again, bonding him more firmly to the chair. A faint pulse ran through the metal and into his skin, an indicator that the system was awakening. Vila raised a slender hand. The drones emitted soft beams that swirled into a translucent holographic sphere around Elias. Scenes began to form, shadows turning into shapes, shapes into familiar outlines. An Earth street. Elias's breath tightened. He didn't panic. Panic was exactly what the Krizari wanted, but he felt the jolt. The illusion sharpened, skyscrapers stretching into a cloudy sky, neon signs flickering, pedestrians milling about with blurred faces. The environment wasn't perfect, some proportions were wrong, movements too synchronized, colors slightly muted. But the resemblance was close enough to deliver emotional impact. Vila watched him closely. We have extracted fragments. We reconstruct your world to evoke your vulnerabilities. Elias kept his eyes steady. You're missing details. The traffic doesn't sound right. Vila tilted his skull. Your deflection attempts will not protect you. The illusion shifted again. A childhood field materialized, grass blowing in wind he couldn't feel, the old fence, the rusted swing. Elias recognized it instantly. Memories tried rising, unbidden. He clamped them down. This was psychological theater, nothing more. Tavel stepped closer. Humans attach significance to irrelevant moments. These attachments weaken structural logic. We exploit that instability. Elias almost laughed. You see weakness where strength hides. The drones pulsed, and the hologram twisted violently. Elias stood within the illusion on a collapsing battlefield. Explosions rocked the ground, though no sound followed. The Krizari had reconstructed fragments of a Terran military conflict, but it was stitched together like a distorted dream. Soldiers moved with looping patterns, fire froze midair, smoke warped unnaturally. Vila spoke softly. Fear is universal. Once triggered, patterns become predictable. Elias studied the false battlefield. You think emotion is a code you can solve. It is, Vila replied. And yours will be deciphered. Elias exhaled slowly and shut his eyes, not to escape, but to concentrate. Through the haze, he reached for calm. A whisper of memory surfaced, the quiet rhythm of his training center, the instructor's steady voice explaining the foundation of emotional redirection. Chaos is not your enemy. Let it obstruct their perception, not yours. He opened his eyes again. The illusion intensified. A figure appeared, someone he knew. Someone the Krizari thought mattered. His mother's outline stepped out of the smoke, distorted and flickering, her face an inaccurate approximation. They expected grief. They expected vulnerability. Elias studied the form, then shook his head. You're getting her wrong. The posture. The expression. You can't replicate reality from scraps. Vila's expression hardened. Your mind provided enough data. Not for what you're attempting, Elias said. You're grasping at shadows and calling them truth. The battlefield dissolved, replaced by darkness. A single spotlight illuminated Elias alone within the sphere. The drones rotated faster, now drawing neural patterns directly from his reactions. He felt the pressure increase. His heartbeat slowed deliberately, training overtaking instinct. Tavel observed the readings. His emotional waves are inconsistent. They fluctuate without pattern. Impossible, the other assistant murmured. All species follow order. Elias flexed his fingers within the restraints. Humans improvise. Vila's eyes brightened. You are trying to interfere. No, Elias corrected. I'm being myself. That's what's confusing you. The sphere collapsed suddenly. The drones released a sharp pulse. Something inside Elias's head vibrated, like a tuning fork struck too hard. For an instant his thoughts scattered, and he felt the pull of their probe trying to dig deeper, past discipline, past memory fortresses. He forced his breathing to steady and redirected his focus, channeling a surge of contradictory emotions, anger mixed with amusement, dread masked behind determination. He let them spike unpredictably, crashing into each other like storm currents. The room flickered. The drones jittered, unable to translate the data. Their beams faltered. Vila froze. What? Elias smiled faintly. I told you. You think emotions are linear. Ours aren't. His mind is creating interference. Tavel exclaimed. Elias pushed harder. He summoned mental imagery at random, numbers, colors, fragments of songs, intense bursts of memory intentionally reassembled in illogical sequences. The Krizari neural system tried to follow the stream but failed. The drone's lights crackled. One of them snapped, sending sparks into the air. Vila stepped back. Cease the probe. The drones dimmed immediately. The restraints loosened slightly as the system recalibrated. Elias's vision steadied. Pain lanced behind his eyes, but he kept his voice even. You came here expecting simplicity, he said. Humans aren't simple. Vila studied him, breathing unevenly, an unusual sign for his species. Your emotional variability defies expected intelligence hierarchy. You exist outside our predictive lattice. Well, Elias said, that sounds like a you problem. The smallest assistant moved toward Vila. High interrogator, this level of defiance indicates strategic threat. Humans may not be suitable for assimilation. They are necessary resources, Vila insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. We will adapt the method. Elias leaned forward, eyes steady. You won't break me. But you might break yourselves trying. Tavel's tendrils curled in agitation. His confidence is troubling. It's not confidence, Elias said. It's reality. Vila looked at him long and hard. We have not exhausted our techniques. And I haven't begun to resist, Elias replied. Silence stretched between them like a held breath. Vila finally turned away. Prepare the neural override. This human cannot remain uncalibrated. The assistants followed him toward the exit, their movements hurried, unsettled. The door slid shut, leaving Elias alone in the dim chamber. His pulse slowed. He inhaled the cold air, grounding himself. He hadn't won. Not yet. But cracks had formed. The Krizari were unsure now not of him, but of their entire approach. They relied on precision, order, predictability. Humans offered none. And that was the advantage he needed. Elias leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. Round 2 was over. Round 3 would be his. The chamber vibrated with a subtle tremor, as if the ship itself were bracing for what came next. Elias Ward lifted his head when the door opened once more, expecting Vila's rigid posture and the usual entourage. He wasn't disappointed. Vila entered with a deliberate poise, though the faint stutter in his steps exposed the strain beneath. The assistants followed, carrying a new device, an angular console with pulsing circuitry wrapped around a crystalline core. Its glow radiated a cold, azure light that crawled across Elias's skin like frost. This was no interrogation drone. It was a neural override system. Vila placed it on the table. Your resistance exceeds projections, he said. Therefore, we will bypass mental defenses entirely. Elias studied the machine. The crystal pulsed rhythmically, matching the cadence of a living organ. That thing reads thoughts, or scrambles them. Both, Vila replied. Your mind will open whether you wish it or not. Elias tilted his head. You're sounding desperate. Tavel hissed under his breath, tendrils fluttering. Vila silenced him with a gesture before turning back to Elias. Your unpredictability must be neutralized, Vila continued. Human variability threatens structural analysis. You will be corrected. Elias allowed a thin smile. You keep using that word. But I'm not the one malfunctioning. Vila activated the console. The crystalline core brightened, releasing thin filaments of light that slithered across the table like serpents seeking prey. The restraints tightened automatically. A tremor of energy rippled through Elias's arms. Then the tendrils dropped from the ceiling again, thicker this time, humming with a resonance that vibrated his teeth. They didn't touch him yet but hovered close enough that he felt the heat radiating from their cores. Begin, Vila ordered. The tendrils plunged toward his temples. A jolt shot through Elias, sharp, invasive, almost electric. For a heartbeat, his thoughts scrambled. Time warped, stretching and collapsing in disjointed flashes. The Krizari override was more aggressive than the earlier probe. It didn't search for memories, it forced pathways open, attempting to carve through mental resistance. He steadied his breathing, locking onto the training that had saved him earlier. But this was different. The override pushed harder, drawing neural energy into its crystalline center. Elias's vision flooded with fractured images, stars collapsing, distorted voices, blurred moments from his childhood, all out of order. The machine wasn't reading. It was ripping. Vila approached him slowly. Your mind will adapt to the override. We will gain full access. Elias clenched his jaw. You really don't understand humans. We understand enough. No, Elias said, voice tight but controlled. You understand patterns. Humans don't follow them. He wasn't sure if they heard him. The tendrils pulsed harder, tightening their grip on his neural pathways. His heartbeat skittered, unable to settle. The room bent at the edges, blurring into streaks of silver and blue. He needed leverage. Anything. A flicker crossed Tavel's display monitor, an unstable reading, oscillating wildly. Emotional overload. That's what had destabilized the earlier drones. The Krizari systems couldn't handle contradictory surges. The override relied on clean signals. Interference might fracture it. Elias forced himself to speak. You want inside my mind? Fine. Take all of it. Vila leaned closer. We intend to. Then hold on. He let go of restraint. He unleashed everything. Anger. Humor. Fear. Triumph. Grief. Determination. Proud defiance. Bitter loss. Hope. Darkness. Fire. Memories he suppressed. Moments he treasured. Images that contradicted each other so violently they couldn't belong in the same psyche. He dragged them up and let them collide, twisting them into a churning emotional storm so erratic no system could separate its strands. The reaction was instant. The crystalline core flickered. The tendrils crackled, colors shifting from azure to violent red. Tavel shouted, "The lattice cannot parse this. The emotional spectrum is collapsing. Stabilize it." Vila commanded. "It does not stabilize," the assistant cried. "His mind is producing sequences outside of measurable structure." Elias pushed harder, driving his emotions louder, sharper, brighter. The machine drank in the surge and choked on it. The core flashed white. A shockwave burst from the console, knocking Vila backward. The restraints shuddered, sparks spit from the table's sides. The tendrils recoiled violently, snapping upward into the ceiling. Elias gasped, chest heaving, but he remained conscious. Vila scrambled to his feet, disbelief carved across his metallic features. "You corrupted the override." Elias smiled through the pain. "You plugged into the wrong species." The console sputtered and died. The restraints loosened enough for Elias to twist free. The sudden release sent him tumbling sideways, but he caught himself on the table's edge before hitting the floor. Tavel lunged at him, razor-thin limbs slicing the air. Elias pivoted, grabbing the fallen console and smashing it into Tavel's skull. The alien crumpled instantly, lights in his eye sockets extinguishing. The remaining assistant stumbled back in horror. "High interrogator, terminate him." Vila hesitated. Fear flickered across his features. Elias straightened. His limbs trembled from neural shock, but adrenaline surged. The tendrils retracted fully into the ceiling, leaving the chamber silent except for the crackling remnants of the failed override. "You wanted inside my head," Elias said, stepping around the table. "How about I take a turn?" Vila retreated, clearly unprepared for this shift. "Human, this defiance is." Elias seized the fallen override crystal. Its surface still held lingering energy, crackling softly like a wounded animal. "You showed me how it works," he said. "It's only fair I return the gesture." He slammed the crystal against Vila's chest. The core flared, releasing a burst of inverted neural energy. Vila's legs collapsed. His skeletal frame convulsed as the crystal fed a feedback loop straight into his primary cognitive chamber. Elias knelt beside him. "You try to decode emotions. We live them." Vila's voice fractured into static. "Human minds, destabilize the lattice, impossible." "Not impossible," Elias said. "Just human." The ship's lighting flickered as the override's feedback spread into nearby systems. Displays on the walls glitched, symbols warping. Krizari technology wasn't built for chaotic data, only precision. Elias Ward stepped into the corridor with the controlled steadiness of a man whose nerves had been strained but not broken. The hall stretched in both directions, sleek metal walls, faint blue lighting, a hum running beneath the floor. The Krizari dreadnought felt alive, its systems pulsing like veins carrying data instead of blood. He glanced back at the interrogation chamber once. Vila's collapsed figure remained motionless under flickering lights. Tavel's shattered body lay crumpled near the console. "Round over," Elias whispered. He turned forward and moved. Every footstep echoed, but no alarm sounded yet. The malfunction triggered by the override crystal had disrupted the local network, buying him precious minutes. Still, he knew the moment a system rebooted, the Krizari would descend on him. He needed to find the control nexus before that happened. A junction map glimmered across a wall panel. He approached, pressing his palm against it. It struggled to process a non-Krizari biometric, but the earlier neural feedback had corrupted access restrictions. The map flickered, then displayed a layout: spiraling decks, living chambers, databanks, weapon cells, and deep in the center, a massive sphere labeled in characters obviously Krizari but roughly translatable in Terran phonetics. Core convergence. Elias smirked. That's the place. He started down the passage, keeping close to the walls. His balance returned gradually, though residual tremors from the probe still ticked through his nerves. The ship vibrated under his feet, unsteady, as if the structure itself was reacting to the emotional overload that had shattered the override machine. The Krizari hated disorder. Now their entire system pulsed with it. A sound echoed behind him, light, fast footfalls. Elias spun and pressed himself into a shadowed alcove. 2 Krizari guards rushed past, speaking urgently. Interrogation sector offline. Emotive pulse detected shipwide. Human interference probable. Inevitable. Their species destabilizes prediction. The guards vanished around a curve. Elias exhaled, waited 3 seconds, then continued. He reached a lift column and stepped inside. The platform descended silently, dropping toward the ship's core. As it moved, translucent windows displayed the decks rushing past, glowing laboratories, silent dormitories, towering archives filled with crystalline data spires. Finally, the platform stopped. The doors parted to reveal a cavernous chamber, massive, spherical, alive with swirling tendrils of light, all converging on a single structure suspended in the center, the control nexus. It was breathtaking. A colossal crystalline engine, latticed with living circuitry, suspended by magnetic fields. Blue-white currents flowed through it, weaving together like neural synapses. Every Krizari system connected here, their communication channels, navigation, emotional lattice, command hierarchy. This was the Empire's brain. Elias stepped inside. The floor was a ringed platform circling the nexus. Walkways bridged to smaller access consoles, each humming with data. He approached one, watching alien symbols swirl across its surface. "All right," he murmured, "let's see what you're hiding." He pressed the ruined override crystal against the console. The interface reacted instantly, recognizing the energy signature, interpreting it as an authorized diagnostic tool. Alien characters dissolved, replaced by raw code streams and internal schematics. Then came something unexpected, a flood of psychological data, mapping emotional feeds from entire sectors of the ship. Humans would see chaos, but to the Krizari, it was structured. Patterns existed everywhere, except now, after Elias's interference, those patterns were unraveling. A warning flashed across the interface. System instability detected. Emotional lattice corrupted. Containment failure imminent. Elias leaned closer. Perfect. A voice echoed across the chamber, strained, familiar. Human. Elias turned sharply. Vila stood at the far end of the platform, staggering, his frame bent, eyelights dim but burning with stubborn resolve. His movements were shaky, but he pushed forward, driven by something between anger and disbelief. "You cannot succeed," Vila said, voice glitching. "This ship cannot fall to one human." Elias faced him squarely. "Then stop me." Vila hesitated, not from fear, but because the deck beneath him trembled, destabilizing. The emotional feedback Elias had unleashed wasn't limited to the interrogation chamber. It had seeped into the ship's neural network, feeding confusion through every system. Your mind, Vila said, is disorder. Chaos. It violates structure. That's humanity, Elias replied. You tried to break me. Instead, you broke your own system. You endanger both species. You abducted me, Elias said, and planned to dissect my mind. Forgive me if I don't feel responsible for the consequences. Vila lunged. Elias sidestepped, catching the alien's shoulder and twisting it hard. Vila crashed against the railing, sparks scattering. Elias pressed the override crystal to the Nexus console again. A deep hum built in the chamber, low at first, then rising, vibrating the platform beneath his feet. The Nexus pulsed a violent red, streams of data spiraling out of control. What have you done? Vila gasped. Overloaded your emotional core, Elias said. Your entire ship is feeling human chaos and it can't process it. The Nexus shuddered. Currents of light flickered wildly. Across the console appeared one final command. Transmit. Elias lifted his wrist communicator, disabled earlier, now flickering with faint life. He aligned its output with the console. Let's send Earth something useful. He pressed the command. A surge of data flashed through his communicator: Krizari fleet coordinates, ship schematics, psychological vulnerabilities, communication frequencies. Everything humanity needed to defend itself. Transmission complete. Elias turned toward Vila, who was slumped against the railing, trembling. The alien whispered, "Why fight us? We offer structure." "Humanity doesn't want your structure," Elias said softly. "We want freedom." The chamber convulsed. The Nexus cracked, thin fractures running across its crystal surface. Light bled through the fissures, bright enough to blind. Containment was collapsing. Elias backed away. Time to leave. He sprinted toward a secondary exit leading to emergency pods. The floor shook violently as alarms blared. Panels burst, spraying sparks like stars scattering from a dying sun. Behind him, Vila cried out, whether in warning, rage, or fear, Elias couldn't tell.